Yeah, please. That'll be
So
awesome.
the Lord is in the audience. Dear God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you that we all had the opportunity to wake up this morning for a bright new day. I pray that you with this speakers day, and I pray that you continue to bless this talk, this chapel, this voice, and I pray that you just continue to be glorified throughout all of it. And I pray that even if just one of us is touched today, that it is a blessing in your sight. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Good. Who's excited to be at school? Give me a yip yip if you're excited to be at school. Yes. Give me a if you're not really. A few well, that's all right. I didn't hear any of the teachers go yip yip either, which is a bit sad, isn't it? No wonder the students aren't excited to be here. That's all I'm saying. I'm joking. Oh, well, look, hey, I'm excited enough to be here for all of you guys, mainly because I don't have to sit in class. That's probably the main reason why I'm excited to be here. But yeah, because I get to hang out with you guys. It was awesome yesterday to get down on the basketball court. I realized I'm terrible at basketball. I'm going to go down and play volleyball today at lunch with Maximus. I definitely think that's more within. Yeah, boy. It's going to be awesome. I rejected the offer yesterday, but definitely coming down there today. But yeah, guys, really excited to get into our theme this week. What is our theme? Eternal. I'm so excited. Yes, you can read. It's amazing. And yeah, we're going to get into it. So just to recap from yesterday, some things last and some things don't. You agree or disagree? You agree, right? Some of us don't know whether we disagree or agree, but the truth is that some things last and some things don't. There are things that are temporary and there are things that last. The Bible says that there are things that are eternal. And so my challenge to you yesterday was to find significance in things that what? In things that are eternal, in things that actually go the distance. Because if you were to find your meaning, if you were to find your significance in things that are temporal, it means that your sense of self, your sense of meaning, your sense of purpose is only ever going to be finite. It's only ever going to have a limited time. And so today we are going to take this thought further, and the thought that I want to share with you today is that society is actually telling us that our meaning comes from things that we consume, and that is not okay. Would you guys agree that society is telling us that our meaning comes from things that we consume? Let me help you try and understand this a little bit more from my perspective at least. So society tells us this in the sense that if I eat at fancy restaurants, if I consume food in fancy restaurants, if I pay more for my caviar or my filet mignon or something like that, I've never had filet mignon, but if I did, I expect it would cost a lot of money. If I was to do that, I would be seen to be in a higher tier of society. Now, I'm sure some of your teachers eat filet mignon on the weekend. I don't know, sure they do. Mr. Brimsmead would, for sure. But here's the point, right? Just because you eat fancier food that costs a little bit more, and I don't know if you guys have been to fancier restaurants, but the portions are always smaller. Have you guys noticed that? The more you pay for food, the smaller portions get, and you're like, man, Macca's sounds really good on the way home. Why would you consider that when you just paid like $40 for, I don't know, hors d'oeuvres or whatever it is? And so here's the thing, right? We as a society have built ourselves, have geared ourselves to think that our meaning and our status and our importance comes from the types of things that we consume. If I get an expensive car, which is a consumable, it's helping me get to and from work or whatever else, but the more expensive my car is, that car is not regenerating, and I can't build cars, and so my car is not getting better. I'm actually consuming that thing, but the more expensive it is, the more people think that I am someone, or I have value, or I have status in society. It's true of clothing as well. the types of brands that I wear, the types of images that I display on my clothing. Clothing is a consumable item, not consuming like this, but actually you're wearing it out at some point. By wearing more expensive brands, you're actually seen to be different. And so all of this is trying to tell us that what we consume, what we heap up for ourselves, where our value and meaning comes from. But the truth is that it doesn't. It actually leaves us empty. And so my point today is this, is that you're actually being lied to. And I'm being lied to. When we buy into this narrative, when we buy into this ideology, we're actually being lied to. And I want to prove to you guys scientifically that that is the case. Have you guys ever heard of dopamine before? Dopamine is this neurotransmitter that it communicates neuron to neuron in our brains, and it deals with the reward center basically. So if we feel good about something, that is because we've had a hit of dopamine, we feel like we've achieved something. And so here are things that can produce dopamine or give us a hit of dopamine in our bodies. One thing is food. Have you guys ever been like craving chocolate cake? Hands up if I've got any cravers of chocolate cake in here. Or maybe some of the brownies from the canteen. Are the brownies that good? I've heard so much about these brownies. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to have to try one. I heard they were giving out some yesterday. I'm going to have to go and try and get on that train. But so we have these cravings, right? And when we take that first bite into that chocolate cake, I know some of you are starting to salivate. When we take that first bite, dopamine is being released. And our body is telling ourselves, that's good, do it again. Have you guys had that? Yeah? It's like, eat some more of that. And so then you try and like fit as much as you can in your mouth, and it doesn't taste as good the second bite. It never does. That's the problem. So adrenaline sports is another way that we can get a hit of dopamine. If we do something crazy, extreme, generally things that are higher risk are going to give us a greater hit of dopamine in the body. Other things are drugs. So the first time we take an illicit substance, that will give us a massive dump of dopamine. That's a herb on the screen. Alcohol as well will give us a hit of dopamine. When we take that first sip, it's always a heightened experience. Gambling again, so pokie machines and even casinos themselves are designed to draw you in and get you hooked, right? And so they're literally designing these casinos to be able to do that. They're placing them, and then all of these machines, all the flashing lights and all of this, it's speaking to that reward center. It's getting your body to fire this dopamine into your system. And so the other thing that can is notifications on your phone. So the app companies and these different companies that we use like Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, they'll literally have psychologists that are designing ways, building ways into the application to be able to draw you in and give you these little hits of dopamine. The other thing that does this in a big way is gaming. These guys, again, spend millions and millions of dollars in development stages in order to draw people in to be able to give them a hit of dopamine. And so you'll do missions in your game and different things that'll give you that sense of satisfaction and that reward. The crazy thing with dopamine, and here's where I believe that we're being lied to, okay? The crazy thing with dopamine is that your body has these receptors that sense the dopamine or that receive the dopamine, but with every dump of dopamine, it deadens the receptors. And so it actually means that first time that you skydive, you jump out of the plane, you have this massive rush. It's this euphoric experience. But the next time that you go to jump out of the airplane, it doesn't feel as good. You don't get that bigger rush. And so what do you have to do? You have to go higher up, or you have to do something crazier. You have to have holes in your parachute or jump out with these wingsuits or something like that. Have you guys ever noticed in adrenaline sports how things are getting crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier? Have you noticed that before? I'm a surfer. I love surfing. Surfing big waves is a big deal for me. I've seen a guy riding a motorbike on the ocean getting a barrel at one of the craziest waves on the planet. It's like, what? Like, what? Why would a motorbike rider need to be on a motorbike in the ocean that's got like these paddle wheels that's control? It's insane. I've seen dudes get barreled with flames on them. Like they'll light themselves on fire and then go and catch a wave. Does that sound ridiculous to any of you guys? It's because, anyway, you guys are gone. You've bought into the lie, guys. So, here's the thing. Your body, your senses are being deadened with every dump of dopamine. And so these guys, these adrenaline junkies, are having to go further and further and further in order to get that same hit of dopamine. It's the same with drugs. Drugs draw you in because the first time you take a drug, it feels amazing. But then every time you take that drug afterwards, it doesn't have the same impact on your body. So you're always left chasing that high. You're always left chasing that first euphoric experience that you had. And so this is the thing. This is where I believe that we're being sucked into this trap, is we're being told that you can have status and whatever else you want, prestige and meaning and significance by these things that you consume. But when you consume them, it always leaves you feeling empty. Your body is literally designed to feel emptier every time you consume these things. And so we're set up in this system where we're actually being torn in two different directions. We're being told one thing and we're experiencing another thing. And so here's my point for you today. You were not designed to be satisfied by what you guys consume. You weren't designed to be satisfied by 100 notifications, 200 notifications, 500 notifications. You weren't designed to be satisfied with reaching that level on that game that you're playing. You weren't designed to be satisfied by these things that these companies are telling us will satisfy you. They're drawing you in with these promises. This is a turtle, by the way. I just wanted to slip another one in there. So this is Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 11. It says, God has made everything beautiful for its own time. What does it say here? Let's read it together. He has planted eternity where? In the human heart, God has planted eternity. What does that mean? It means that literally you were designed by your Creator to be satisfied with nothing less than eternity. You were literally designed to live forever, and nothing short of that would satisfy you. So the point is that you were actually made for more. You were made for more than what this life has to offer. You were made for more than what any notification could give you. You were made for more than what any validation could give you. You were designed for something bigger, designed for something greater. I want you to reflect on this quote with me. This guy is a Christian philosopher, and I think this thought that he shares here is really profound. It says, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy. Now, what he means is that earlier on in this quote, he's actually saying that, have you ever had a desire for food before? Have you ever been hungry? Hands up if you've been hungry. A few of us have been hungry, a few of us hungry right now. The fact that you've been hungry before, in and of itself, proves that food exists. The fact that you've been hungry before proves that food exists. The fact that you've had a desire for water before, you've been thirsty before, that proves that the satisfaction of that desire exists. He goes on to use other examples around sex and other desires that we have. It in and of itself proves that the satisfaction of those desires exist. Now listen to what he goes on to say. The most probable explanation, if you have found yourself with the desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, if you have found yourself wanting more than what this world has to offer, the most probable explanation is that you were made for another world. I want you to wrap your head around that for a second. If you have ever been left wanting more, if you have ever felt unsatisfied, then the logical explanation of that sense of dissatisfaction is that you were actually designed for something else. You were designed for something more than what this life has to offer. And so I have found that people are unsatisfied with life. I remember when I was in year 7, there was a young guy in our class that got leukemia. And our whole school kind of came around this guy, and we were doing a lot with him. He was in and out of hospital and would miss like massive chunks of class and that sort of thing. And we'd spent heaps of time with him and his family. And he ended up passing away. And it was a really sad funeral. It was a really sad funeral. His family was really grieving. Really grieving. But then I've been to, and you can kind of understand that, right? Like this kid had his whole life ahead of him. He had so much potential. He had so much to give. We'll never know the impact that he could have had on the world. There's so much unrealized potential. But let's think about this for a second. I went to a funeral of an 89-year-old last year. And guess what? People were crying. Why would they be crying when an 89-year-old has died? It's like, what do they want her to, do they want her to live to like 100? Like, okay, I've been to a funeral of a 103-year-old and people were still crying. They were still upset. How long do they expect these people to live? And what quality of life did these individuals have at that stage of their life anyway? Like, honestly, like what do you want from these people, to just live forever? I think that we do. I think that we genuinely do. So whether you go to a funeral of a young person or whether you go to the funeral of an old person, there's still this sense of loss. There's still this sense that they were taken before their time. And we as a society, although death has been a part of our society literally forever, we still aren't used to, we still aren't comfortable with the idea that people pass. And that is shown by how people act, by how people relate to death. Has anyone here been to a funeral before? A few of us have, yeah. Most of us have. How come all the younger ones haven't and the older ones are, oh, you guys just don't want to lift up your hand? Interesting. Okay. Yeah, you guys can put your hand down. Isn't that interesting? We've been to funerals before. Was it a sad occasion? Yeah? Did you witness people crying there? Yeah. It'd be weird if they weren't, right? It'd be weird if they weren't upset, they weren't emotional. But just think about that. Like, if death has been a part of our lives forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, why do we still cry? Why are we still shocked? Like, oh, grandma passed away. It's like, she's been on that journey her entire life. And yet we're still saddened by it. But here's the point. It's because we were never designed to be satisfied with this life. There's always this sense, we're always going to be left with this sense that there is something more to come, that we were designed for more than what this world has to give us. And so I remember at my grandfather's funeral, my grandmother was crying. She was very upset. They'd been married for, I think it was 60 years. They had like their diamond anniversary. I don't know if anyone knows if that's the diamond tier or not. There's like these precious metals that they associate with different anniversaries. So they'd had 60 years together. Does that sound like a lot of years to you? Maybe it was 70 because they were, I think it was 60. Anyway, I'm not that good with details. But here's the point. They'd had 60 years together and she still feels like she's been ripped off. She still feels like there was more to that relationship. She still feels like, we'll chat about that after. She still feels like there's more to come. She's still looking for something else. She still desires more time with this guy, my grandfather. And it's like, It's so illogical unless we believe that we were designed for something outside of this world. Because the average marriage does not last for 60 years. They were well above average in terms of the time that they'd been able to spend together. So why would she be so unsatisfied with her experience? They'd had a good marriage. They enjoyed time together. So why would she be so unsatisfied? Why would she be left wanting more? Here's the point. I believe that the way that we relate to death as a society proves that we were designed for more than what this life has to offer. I believe that the way that we as a society relate to death proves that you were actually designed for another world, that you weren't meant to be satisfied. I think that your bodies were created to be unsatisfied by these pleasure centers that are being, these reward centers that are firing when you take that substance or you look at that notification or whatever it is, or when you play that game for however long you play it. All of this is designed to satisfy you, to draw you in, but all it does is addict you and leaves you unsatisfied in the end. And so I believe that as a society we have been lied to. I believe that you've been lied to and I've been lied to, and it's time for us to realize that we were actually made for more. We were made for eternity. You were literally designed by God to live forever. You were designed by God to experience so much more than what this life has to offer. And so I'd love to, and I'm so glad I get to, over the next few days, unpack what it means, what God is offering us when He invites us into an eternal experience. I'm going to invite our band up. We're going to have our closing song now. And just while they do, I want to leave you guys with a question. If you could live forever, would you? If you could live forever, would you? Stand up if you would, sit down if you wouldn't. Stand up if you would want to live forever. Yeah, individually. All right, you guys can sit down. Tomorrow we're going to be unpacking whether or not we would actually want to live forever. But in order for us, I'm going to hand over to the band now for our closing song. But you guys were made for more. I just want to share this with you really quick before we go. We've just got a little bit more time before lunch. I had an experience one night when I was about 15 years of age. I was sitting in church, and there was a song going on. It was Kingscliff Church. It was a Friday night program. And up until that point, I'd never really been accustomed with death. I'd been to one funeral. It was an older family member, and death had never really become a reality to me. But there I was standing in church this one night singing, and my mum came in, and she wasn't at church. My sister had taken me to church. She came in, and she's like, "Hey, Joel, come out here." Have you guys ever been embarrassed by your mum before? Like, imagine sitting there with all your friends and your mum comes and taps you on the shoulder and it's like, "Joel, come here," and everyone's like looking at you. I was so embarrassed. And so I'm standing there in the foyer of church just like, "Mom, what are you doing? I'm so uncool." And there I am, and she's like, "Joel, your cousin just had a car accident." And this was my cousin. He was like 3 years older than me. And so he was the guy that when I was young I looked up to. He had scars all over his body. He rode motorbikes and just did crazy stuff. Like when I was growing up, we'd always spend time with his family and I'd always look up to this guy. And that Friday night he'd been driving to a friend's house and wrapped his car around a pole to the point where the taillight touched the blinker on the front. Like just fully wrapped his car around the pole, died on impact. And so there I am, and all of a sudden, I can't even explain to you guys the feeling. As a 15-year-old, as someone who has never really contemplated the fact that I could die, the fact that I would die. I knew it would come eventually. It was some distant reality. I knew at some point in the future I was going to die, but it never really hit home that it could happen now. And there I was sitting in church or standing in the foyer of church. And my mum tells me this news, and all of a sudden, I just felt this reality of like, I could die. That could be me, because my cousin who I looked up to, my cousin who I idolized, my cousin who I thought had everything in life, if he could die, then it could certainly happen to me. He had escaped death so many times up until that point. Here's the point, guys. At some point, whether you have right now or whether that's some point in the future, you are going to be faced with the reality that you will die. You will die. And at whatever point that comes, you have to know whether or not you'd be satisfied with the life that you have lived. If you were to die tonight in your sleep, are you satisfied with the life that you have lived? Are you satisfied with the time that you have had? Are you satisfied with the impact that you have had on those around you? Because for me in that moment, all I could think of was regret. All I could think of were things that I wasn't able to accomplish. All I could think of were things that were to come in the future. I wasn't satisfied with where I was. I wasn't satisfied with the life that I'd lived. And I don't think that whether I've had 15 years or 50 years or 550 years, I don't think that that feeling necessarily leaves. And so for me, soon after that point, I made a decision to follow Jesus because I wanted to think that there was something more to come. I wanted to think that there was something more than what this life has to offer. And Christianity isn't just a crutch. It's not just something that weak people rely on. It's not just something that those who are so afraid of death rely on. It's actually plausible. What Christianity teaches, what the Bible teaches about life, death, and resurrection is actually plausible. And I've shared just a little bit of philosophy with you guys today around one of the reasons why I think that we have been created is because of how we relate to death, because of how we relate to the end of our lives. And so I've been faced with death many times since then. And this whole week isn't just about death, just so you guys know. You're not going to have to be dealing with death every single day this week. But it is an important part of life, and how we relate to death impacts the way that we live today. And so I'd love to see you guys being set up for success. I'd love to see you guys living your lives in a way that has an impact, that you maximize the impact that you can have on those around you. And so that's why we're dealing with this theme of eternal this week. We're talking about living a life that lasts, that goes beyond what we are experiencing. And so I just wanted to share that story with you guys because that's when I started to relate to death. That's when death became a reality for me. And I had to seriously ask myself some questions. Do I want to live forever? If I had the opportunity, would I live forever? And that's why I think it's really important for us to unpack this, and that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you that you love us and that you provide a solution to the greatest problem that we will ever face. That you give us hope beyond the grave. And Father, as we continue to unpack this theme this week, we just want to ask that you would be our guide, that you would help us to reconnect with that part of ourselves where you planted eternity in our hearts, Father. Teach us what that means. Show us how to live with eternity as a reality. Father, thank you so much for all of these students. Thank you for the experiences that they have had and will have. And I just ask that this opportunity that we have to reflect on not only the end of our lives, but what might come beyond that would actually be a blessing for each one of us. I just want to pray this in Jesus' name.